Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi.
Hello. Let's talk about donuts.
Okay. Well, let's do that then. I had voodoo donuts. I got them at an airport. Because voodoo donuts originated in Portland. We got one in Denver. And now apparently they have one in the airport, which I thought was funny. So,
and I had one at some...
Well, it would have been the voodoo donuts in Denver then, right?
No,
or did you go to an event?
It was at a food hall.
Oh.
They had a little branch there. And it was just, oh my God, it was hard because I wanted to eat fucking everything there. It was just, there's a Denver biscuit company there. Becky Clark, I'll have to ask her what the name of the place was. There was a Denver biscuit company. There was a place with bagels. What that is, which I will never forget because that's where I ordered my iced tea and the woman behind the counter said sweetened or unsweetened. And I said, unsweetened. I like it to reflect my personality. Bitter and black or something like that. I don't know what I said, but she cracked up. She thought it was hilarious. It wasn't until I got to the table that I went, because I'm sitting there going, why is she? Oh, I just called myself a black woman. That's why she's laughing so hard.
What, she didn't believe you?
I can't imagine why not.
Yes, you were stunned because my favorite of all. So I got I think it was 6 donuts. And just carried this pastry box on the frickin' flight with me because I got in Denver and I still had to fly to Colorado Springs. It was such a pain in the ass. But I brought home the 6 donuts and then I cut all of them into fourths. And then each of us got basically a smorgasbord of donut pieces.
That's
so we could try all these
charcuterie.
flavors. It was.
My God, I love that.
So, but oddly, because everybody knows at this point that if it doesn't have chocolate,
it's not dessert.
That's right. The best tasting one was this mango one. And it had a mango jelly in it and then mango icing, but they had put sour powder, all over the top. And so it was this sweet and sour. And I don't know, my tongue was just what is this? We love it.
Nikki would love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, donut. And you have also had the mochi donuts in town, haven't you?
Yeah.
I have not yet.
Oh, I love the texture so much. It's a good thing it's way, way, way down by the Citadel Mall.
But I have heard that those are also popular in Hawaii.
Oh, so you can try them there.
So but the other thing that I'm really worried about is that, you know what else is really popular in Hawaii?
What?
Korean fried chicken.
Oh.
Which I love. I mean, it looks like every other corner has Korean fried chicken. There's a lot of Asian food there overall, but yeah. I'm so if I come back and can't fit in my pants, I'm blaming the Korean fried chicken.
Okay, you're going to Hawaii. No matter what, you're going to come back and not fit in your pants. Any trip is going to be like that.
Except going to Hawaii, I will be eating prodigious amounts of seafood. So
yes,
hopefully not fried.
I think there's a lot of fried.
If they had Korean fried chicken style.
Are you going to have some Spam?
I will have masubi, yes.
Okay. What about Spam and eggs?
No, but I will have masubi. I've eaten Spam. I grew up in the rural Northeast. Hello. I had plenty of Spam.
Gotcha.
Fried.
It's actually really good fried. I had it as a kid. Because, it's cheap. Super cheap. It's still probably cheap. I don't know. I haven't looked at it. But, we went to, I think it was a Costco.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing the sampling. And so they fried it up, and they put some mayo, and they put it on a bun. And I was like, hey, this is pretty good. So we bought, of course, it was Costco. We bought the case of Spam. By the time we were done with that case of Spam, we were like, oh, this makes my soul sad. Let's finish this shit off. And be done with the Spam.
Somebody
it's very salty.
So it is. Somebody I know, a family I know, they have a can of Spam that's been in the family for a very long time. Because when it was given to somebody as a moving gift. Because it's no matter what happens, you will always have something to eat in the house.
That's right.
Well, then this can has been going around for years. And they stick things to it. They glue on a flower or a key or a... So...
That's fun.
Yeah. So you will always have something to eat.
So we have a new Buy Me a Coffee supporter. So I'm going to let you do the shout out, but they're a book addict. They're a true crime addict.
True crime addict, yes. So we would like to give a big shout out to Linda Frame. Thank you very much for your support.
Of Frida fame.
I was going to say, for everybody going, who? That I call her Frida. So we met the summer between high school and college. We were going to the same college, and we were dating two guys who were friends. And so the guys said, let's go out. The four of us, let's go out to a movie. So we got to the movie theater, and that was back in the day when I'm way too cheap to do this now, but you would go to the movie theater and you would buy soda and popcorn and everything. So we file in and we sit down, and the guy she was dating, Rod, was sitting in between. It was Frida and then Rod, then me, and then Howard. And I can't remember what Rod said. He made some really sexist joke. And Frida just looks at him, and she sticks this big wad of napkins in his Coke. And he goes, hey! And he turns and looks at me, and I reach over and push the napkins down into the soda. And he goes, hey! Frida and I just looked at each other and went, yep, we're going to be friends. And we have been. And she knows where all the bodies are buried.
That's right. So you have to stay friends now. It's bad when your enemies know where the bodies are buried.
Yes.
So thank you for your support.
Yes.
So I went camping in Arizona, and I would like everybody to know that Prescott, Arizona is really just Colorado. Just like Flagstaff was. So pine trees and all that. It's very nice. It was very clean. We did a lot of reading. I finished 2 books.
What did you finish?
On the camping trip. I finished a Jeff Strand, because why wouldn't I read a horror comedy while I was camping in the woods by myself? Oh, it's something like Lost Homicidal Maniac, Answers to Shirley. It might not be the precise title, but it's like that. I think it is Lost. Anyway, so they have a woman come into the office, and she's like, I think I might be killing people in blackouts. Like, I think I might be a blackout serial killer. And it just goes...
I love his stuff.
Wrong from there.
Yep.
And then what was the second? Oh, it was I don't even remember what the series is called. It's been this froofy, like light, frothy mystery series set in an imaginary town in New York, actually. Like on an island off of it or something like that. Like super happy. They call each other honey an awful lot. She did learn. So you could buy the box sets for really super cheap an ebook. And so I got the first one. And I was like, all right, I'll keep reading this for some froofy shit. I like it. Every little once in a while, I got to read something like that. And I remember it was like the second book, the first and second book. The word honey, because everybody talking would put it at the end of their sentence. I think somebody said something, she learned something, you learn. And so it's not as bad throughout. They still use it a lot for me. Like, ugh. You don't say honey that much in your everyday conversations, do you? I don't think you do, but maybe you do. But anyway, those are fun. So I read that too, because my coworkers, like half of them would just chill and read. So we just pulled up a camping chair and read, and there's always snacks. Like our job's really good about making sure we have food. So there are snacks, and then our 3 meals. So we'll just snackety snacking.
I read the new Stephen Graham Jones.
Oh.
The second one, the follow-up to, the one that happened at the lake. It was the big one. I'm terrible with titles.
Apparently. All right, so Stephen Graham Jones' newest book, whatever that may be.
It's the second in the series. He's writing a trilogy. He's probably already written the 3rd book.
He writes super fast.
This is the second book in the trilogy. And I know you've read the first book. Just the end of they're all in the lake watching Jaws. On the not ringing any bells?
No.
Okay. Anyway, it was absolutely delightful. And I really felt like it was your reward for having read the first book. Not in the first book was bad, so you're being rewarded with the second book. It was like you read the first book and you were so good, you get a treat, you get a second one. Oh my God! It was, but if you like horror, it was a really good book.
Aw.
And you will love it because, like the first one, she references all these horror movies, some of which, I mean, a lot of which I'm familiar with, but no, not all of them. You would know them.
Mm-hmm.
I do not.
Well, he loves a slasher. So I imagine there's references to slashers. Slashers and werewolves, I think, are his first loves right there. But if I remember right, I know the werewolves were. So when he finally wrote a werewolves book, he was super happy. Oh, I had a nice moment. Totally forgot to tell you. So we're a conference that we have worked at and taken part in and done all this for years and years. Neither of us went this year. Pikes Peak Writers Conference is this weekend that we're recording. And I went to drop off some books. And I was sitting there and a woman walked in and she went, Shannon. And I turned around and said hi because she did look familiar, but like not as somebody I know, right? And she was like, I attended your workshops last year and
nice.
I bought one of your books and I just need you to know that you're a really talented author and so on and so forth. And I was like, damn, you don't know how much I needed to hear some of that right now.
That's great.
But and then she said that there were no horror workshops this year and she was sad because there weren't any horror workshops at the conference.
I understand that they focused on having a smaller faculty and fewer workshops.
Okay.
Which is something that they've been talking about, and I'm glad
for a long
that
time.
yeah. I would have wanted a horror workshop as well, but you know.
Hit each genre a little bit.
Well, yes. But I don't know what.
But if nobody pitches one, it's not going to happen.
Yes.
Okay, so the thing about going to this place that you've been for years, and like every new person walked in and they were like, hey! And so you get, and so that happened.
You get 10 seconds with each of them.
It was a really lovely moment. I was quite happy. And then that night, we went to Skirted Heifer to get... I haven't had Skirted Heifer in forever, and we went to the one that's way out off Dublin and Powers instead of downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've not been.
So, for people, a skirted burger, they kind of like fry cheese. They make the cheese come out of the burger, and they fry it in a skirt around the burger. Mm-hmm. And it's super yum. Super greasy. So anyway, one of my ex-employees at the Pie Bar was working there, and he had worked at the one downtown before he worked at the Pie Bar. So that was fun too, like getting to see. It's been years.
My, how time flies.
So that was fun, and I got free drinks out of that. So
then
I was like, somebody went to one of my workshops, and they thought it was awesome, and somebody gave me free drinks on the same day. How great is that?
I like it.
I know. I was like, could every day please be like this? No,
yes.
I would get really tired engaging with people that much, actually. I'm like, how do I do this anymore? All right.
But you can have one day like that a week.
Sure. That would be good. Like that might keep me going.
Do you enjoy going to the grocery store? If so, this message is not for you. But if you're like me and procrastinate going to the store, Instacart is a fantastic option to ensure you no longer have to. Save yourself a trip and go through Instacart, where you can get a delivery through a personal shopper in as little as 1 hour. My experiences have been great so far, with my personal shopper texting me before substituting another product, letting me know when they were on their way to my house, and letting me know it had been delivered, all via text. If you click on our affiliate link in the show notes or on our website, you get free delivery on your first order over $35, and you help out our show at the same time. It's the perfect time to give it a try.
So what are you going to talk about this week?
I am going, you know how I like to cover a story that a fictionalized movie or book ends up getting made from. So I'm going to do another one because it's been a while. I think it's been a while since I did one.
I think it has.
And this one is what people believe inspired the film Jennifer's Body, which is one of my favorite horror comedies at this point, with Megan Fox.
Still haven't seen it.
Oh my God. The snark in it is magical.
Oh, okay. See, now that would get me to
snark fest. Okay. And the funniest freaking just teenage speak ever. So this is the case of Elyse Pahler. And I do want to say, while 5 billion articles say that Jennifer's Body was based off of this, I did not actually find, like, from the director that she was inspired by this. So just to be perfectly clear on that. And oh my gosh, we watched Cannonball Run last night with the kids, and I forgot all the people that were in it. Like Jackie Chan is in it. In the
really
80s, wasn't
it?
Wow.
Wow.
Yes, Jackie Chan was in it playing Jackie Chan. And Roger Moore was in it playing, oh my God, it's some name. What is it? Somebody Goldfarb. And his mother's like, I don't understand this spy nonsense you've been pulling and playing this Roger Moore character. So he's somebody playing himself in it.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was funny. And then every time you see him in the race, he's got a new woman next to him in his car.
I need to rewatch that.
The kids actually really liked it too. Like they were laughing the whole time. And that's there's so many little in-jokes and references to stuff like the Roger Moore stuff. So that was one where like, I was like, all right, you guys, by the way, he was one of the first James Bonds, not the first. And his name is Roger Moore. And they're like, oh, that's funny then. Okay. So there's stuff like that. But Adrienne Barbeau was in it. And this wraps into this because Adrienne Barbeau, the actress, did a lot of horror. She's well known. She's pretty much a scream queen. And she did a podcast, and I think it was called She Kills, which was bringing on people and talking to the women from horror film.
Oh, nice.
Which was fun. And she had the director and I think writer, don't quote me, of Jennifer's Body on her show.
She also played the daughter on Maude.
Yeah.
That's where
she's been in a billion things.
Yes, she has been.
But
Swamp Thing.
Yes. So that was fun. Anyway, Elyse Pahler was born April 24th, 1980 in the California town of Arroyo Grande, which was a fairly small town, although they said, I could swear, they said like 15,000 population, which isn't huge, but isn't tiny. It's not 102. It's not like the two that live in, what is it, Bus, Colorado or whatever, when you're driving up to Woodland Park.
Yeah.
Because they got themselves a town. Blonde and blue-eyed, Elyse had aspirations to be in beauty pageants and to eventually become a Hollywood actress. In her teens, she started partying with alcohol and marijuana, and her parents put her into rehab at one point to get off marijuana. I was like, rehabs will take you for marijuana?
Back then.
Okay. While she was in rehab, here's why, you know what? Oh, that'd be terrible to say. But I will say.
What?
Them putting her in rehab is where she met the people who...
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, while she was in rehab, she met Jacob Delaschmidt. I listened to a video how to say her name, but I don't particularly care if I pronounce murderers' names wrong. Who was 16.
Fair.
So she was 15. Jacob introduced her to Joseph Fiorella, 15 years old, and Royce Casey, 17 years old, both of whom had actually gone to her school, and they'd all these boys had been expelled from her school. They had some trouble. These three boys decided to start up a heavy metal band. They called it Hatred, and their big inspiration was Slayer. And based on Joseph Fiorella's interest in Satanism and the occult, they injected that into their music. And he was constantly talking about Satanism and all of that. But it wasn't just their music. As with basically all upstart bands, they weren't doing great. I mean, they were getting some local bookings, but they weren't making it big. They weren't being discovered. They weren't making a bunch of money. So Fiorella, who is known to have become obsessed with Elyse, proposed sacrificing a virgin to make their band more successful. And he felt that it would be somehow double offensive if said virgin were blonde and blue-eyed. Like a big smack in the face to God, basically. And with his obsession with Elyse, that meant that virgin had to be Elyse, who would hang out with them and they would all do drugs. Post-rehab, for the record. While the other two boys bucked against it at first, they finally came around. On July 22nd, 1995, Casey called Elyse up and asked her to come over so they could hang out, smoke a little pot. Hey, I've got some pot. Why don't you come over and we'll just hang out and chill. Elyse took him up on it and headed out. Somehow, they convinced her to go out to a eucalyptus grove on the Nipomo Mesa, where Delaschmidt got a belt around her throat and pulled it tight. Casey held her arms to keep her from struggling, and Fiorella stabbed her with a hunting knife. And she had clearly not told her parents where she was going, so they didn't know who to even go to say, hey, do you know where she is? As she fought for her life, crying for her mom and begging Jesus Christ for help, the boys took turns stabbing her with at least 12 to 15 stab wounds found in her neck and back. They also admitted to stomping on her as she lay on the ground, pleading. She died of massive blood loss, though it was stated that the death was fairly slow due to none of the stab wounds being fatal on their own.
They even fucked that up.
Yep. After she was dead, they took turns raping her body.
They're classy.
Oh, it gets better. For 8 months, her body not only lay in the woods at this remote site, as her family desperately searched for some sign of her, but the boys returned and continued having sex with the rotting corpse. Yeah. But Royce Casey moved away, and he started going to church. He feared his friends would come after him and kill him, or that he would be tempted to murder again. So he went to the police and turned himself and his friends in, leading police to the girl's body where it had partially mummified. It's 8 months. He mentioned that his friends, along with an additional boy who wasn't ultimately involved in this murder, had tried to lure her out to murder her once before, and something had come wrong because had gone wrong. She had gone out with him, but I don't know if they chickened out, which is likely, right? Like, it's one thing to talk about murdering somebody. It's another to do it. And then once they did it, though, it was so brutal. They must have gotten themselves so amped up. Mm-hmm. Like, pot doesn't amp you up. It's a downer. No. So they did something to get worked up. So she had actually escaped with her life once before, not knowing that it had even been threatened, only to ultimately die at their hands, right? The boys were all minors when they committed the crime, the oldest, again, being 17. That was Royce Casey, but they were each given life sentences with the possibility of parole. Casey's minimum time served, because he's the one who went to the police, was he could go for parole after 21 years, and the other two, it was 26 years minimum. They're each in separate prisons. So they put each of the boys in a different prison, which I think was smart. I don't know if they did it that much on purpose, but I think they were tried in the same place. And there's pictures of all three of them together. So I don't know if they were tried together or what. Due to the boys having admitted to being inspired by the Slayer songs Postmortem and Dead Skin Mask to murder Elyse, Elyse's parents filed a lawsuit against Slayer in 1996, claiming Slayer songs gave listeners instructions to stalk, rape, torture, murder, and commit acts of necrophilia. The lawsuit was held until 4 years later when the criminal proceedings finished. So it did get delayed so that could be done first against the three boys. But when it did hit the courts, the judge threw it out. He said, quote, "There's not a legal position that could be taken that would make Slayer responsible for the girl's death. Where do you draw the line? You might as well start looking through the library at every book on the shelf." That just really hit home right now, huh? Because what are people doing now? They're back to book banning. So they tried again, but the next judge also struck it down, and I'm glad, because I think it's bullshit when this happens, but I understand they want to find a scapegoat, but you got three boys who are the scapegoats, and they chose to make these actions. Don't diminish their guilt by going after somebody else.
No.
Jacob Delischmidt was interviewed in the Washington Post and said about the accusations against Slayer, quote, "The music is destructive, but that's not why Elyse was murdered. She was murdered because Joe was obsessed with her and obsessed with killing her." Which really boils it down to what we see repeatedly. A male feeling entitled to some sort of ownership over a female and murdering her because of it. He just somehow managed to convince other boys to help him with the excuse of making their band a success. Recently, in 2021, Royce Casey attempted to be paroled. The parole board did grant him release in March 2021, but Governor Newsom, after I think the DA went to Governor Newsom and petitioned to have him look at it, Governor Newsom reversed the decision. He said, quote, "I have determined that Mr. Casey must do additional work to deepen his insight into the causative factors of his crime and coping skills before he can be safely released on parole." Upon appeal, Casey was granted parole by a judge in June 2022. His attorney stated, quote, "Very barbaric and callous, heinous and deplorable." I will say Royce Casey has very much said he knows what they did was disgusting. He knows it's his fault. But anyway, further the quote, "We follow the law, but we also follow the heart. And we realize the severity of the crime. That is number one. Number two is that Royce Casey is a rehabilitated man. He's in his 40s now. The fact that he was the one who led police to both the body and his fellow perpetrators was taken under consideration, as was the fact that he has thrown himself into helping others and has pursued college degrees while in prison. I believe he's going for psychology and sociology. Although I thought it was funny that there was one, I was fully behind what they were saying about, so like, we are never going to diminish what was done here. But at one point, the attorney said, quote, "He hasn't committed any further crimes." I'm like, he's in prison.
Yeah.
Dumb shit. As part of the reason he should be released. Duh. So it was like, okay, you're right. He hasn't. He did get into a dust up in prison, and he had to talk about that at the parole board early on. Because of the nature of what they had done, there were other people in the prison after them. And at one point, he had heard somebody was planning on killing him. And so he got in a fight with somebody else so that he'd get locked put it
in solitary.
Yes. And he said, were there other things I could have done to solve this problem? Yes. And I should have looked at those. I made a mistake. So, I mean, either he might just be really good at lip service or he truly believes these things. And he has been a mentor in prison. He's done all the right things and helped other people. So during the parole hearing, Casey said that he often thinks of, quote, how immense the suffering is that I caused. That Elyse doesn't have her life anymore because of me. She had to feel so much pain and terror while I was murdering her. He went on to say, quote, nothing I can ever say or nothing that I can ever do will ever bring back the life that she could have had. The life she had for her or her parents. I'm ashamed by the person that I was then, and I'm disgusted by the person that I was then. I'm ashamed that I took her entire future away. She was truly a wonderful person who was loving, vibrant, enthusiastic, encouraging, and gentle. It breaks my heart to think how much she lost because of me. She never got to graduate from high school or go to her prom. She never got to go to college or fall in love and get married. She never got to be a mom. And finally he said, it was my defects that led me to this, not my co-defendants, not music, not drugs. So, I mean, you know, he intends to become a drug counselor in LA upon release. And the thing is, so the last news was that in 2021, he'd been granted parole. And there's a processing that happens after that.
Yeah.
I could not find anything that said he was out.
Okay.
So I'm just not sure where that stands. But I had also not seen that it had not yet, again, been reversed. Elyse's parents and their lawyer did not fight his position for parole and are still blaming the Slayer lyrics for the crime. They do, however, oppose any attempts by the other two men to seek parole. They do feel that Royce Casey is legitimately sorry and that he has made himself a better person. So they are not against him getting out. They didn't fight it, but they fully believe the other two should stay in prison. Joseph Fiorella, the one who was supposedly obsessed with her, comes up for parole around this July.
Ugh.
After having waived his last hearing in 2022, and Jacob Delishment will come up in December 2024. In 2017, the Pahler family was seeking financial restitution they hadn't received from the murderers. Elyse's father said he hadn't been able to work for 3 years following Elyse's murder, that he'd lost a massive contract worth $520,000, and that they'd lost their home and had to go on welfare because he couldn't work. He was also involved in a road rage incident in 2014 where he followed someone who cut him off and dragged the person out of their car. He blamed it on his PTSD. I was disappointed that he was actively blaming it on everything but himself. And I feel like he isn't taking responsibility for his actions. And I should say, I was involved in an altercation with a man whose daughter was killed in a car accident. And he got very dark. He lived in my parents' neighborhood, and he came after us in his car at one point. But he made the mistake because it was Brandon and I. And we weren't just going to be like, yeah, sure, let's fight. So we fought back. But I called the police because it was that bad. And I wanted a report filed so it was on record in case something else happened, but I didn't want to press charges because I knew his background. If I hadn't, I would have, right? And then I wrote him a note and left it under his door about why I wasn't pressing charges, but that it was on record and he needed to clean his shit up because it had been a couple years. Like, I can never imagine what it feels like to lose your child this way.
No.
But you also don't get to use that as an excuse to attack other people. You have to take responsibility for your actions. And so, yeah. I don't know if I'd be more sympathetic about it if it hadn't happened to me because somebody was in that dark place. So I can respect the dark place. I can totally empathize with that. But you don't get to attack me or somebody else because of it. It's just take responsibility. You know? Like, unbelievable what happened to their daughter. There's the second case recently I've done where a girl was stomped.
That's just
during
awful.
the process, you know, and that is such a vile, violent, personal, nasty thing to do. Somehow to me, that's even worse than the stabbing is the stomping because you're treating them, it's just utter trash below you. To stomp on a human being. They're just trash to you.
Yeah, you're wiping your feet on them.
Yeah. So that bothers me more. Sources, Wikipedia, KSBY, NBC News, Caso Criminal, and Newshawk.
Well, okay. So mine is not a delightful, light, and breezy story to follow this. However, it has a somewhat of a better ending. So I'm going to talk about Grace Tame. Grace Tame was born in December of 1994 in Hobart, Tasmania. Her father was a former Tasmanian cricketer. That just tickled me, and I wanted to say cricketer. She attended St. Michael's Collegiate Girls' School. She had 2 different scholarships. She was diagnosed with anorexia at year 10, which roughly corresponds to 10th grade here. So I believe she would have been 15, 16. Mm-hmm. I believe she was 15 when, yes, she was 15 when she was diagnosed with anorexia. So, as you might gather from its name, St. Michael's began as a religious school, which we're oh so fond of on this podcast. Love us a religious school. It's not Catholic. This one was Church of England. If you're like, what the hell's Church of England? The Church of England renounced papal authority in the 1500s when Henry VIII couldn't get a divorce. That's what we call a gross oversimplification. Yep. But let's go back to Grace. So in April of 2010, at the age of 15, she was noticed by one of her science teachers, 58-year-old South African Nicholas Bester. He recognized her vulnerabilities and preyed on her insecurities, first grooming her and then sexually assaulting her 20 to 30 times over the course of a year. He isolated her from her family and friends, kept her from getting medical attention when she relapsed into anorexia, and then she also began self-harming. What a fucking shock. I mean, yeah. He was 58. Yeah. Nicholas Bester. I would like his name to be remembered. I hope he gets, I actually wrote this out. I hope he gets an infected hemorrhoid for every single time she harmed herself. I hope his dick rots off and the stump explodes. I get a little carried away, but I don't even care. Except, here's the thing. The administrators at that school knew what was going on and chose to cover up for the pedophile teacher rather than go to the police.
Just like a church.
Strangely
and it
enough,
was a religious school. Funny how that happens.
Yep. In April of 2011, Grace was able to tell another teacher what was going on. And that teacher said, fuck this, and called the police immediately.
Good.
So what happened next? Bester was convicted and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. He was also given an additional 4 months for possession of child pornography. Of course, we don't ever expect anyone to serve all of their time. What's a little sexual abuse between a person of authority and,
a child,
a person in their power? At that time, and before I tell you this, I will tell you it has since changed. But at that time, the crime was maintaining a sexual relationship with someone under the age of 17. Which Tame later argued, successfully, that it should be changed to sexual abuse.
Good.
Because relationship makes it sound consensual.
Yes.
And it was not. The judge who sentenced him commented on the blatant way Bester took advantage of an emotionally fragile student. I mean, even the judge.
But if it was a lesser charge at the time and stuff like that, their hands are tied when it comes to sentencing.
Yes. He served a whopping 18 months. He spent that time preparing for a doctoral program at the University of Tasmania, which he entered as soon as he was released. I gotta know what this fucker wrote on his admissions application. I mean, really. Because he would have been like 60 at this time. Mm-hmm. And I want to say he was getting his degree in chemistry because he was a science teacher. In 2015, he was arrested again. First of all, there were more child pornography charges. But secondly, this limp dick was online bragging about his abuse of Grace Tame. Mm-hmm. That was slightly illegal. When he got out of jail, he again goes back to the University of Tasmania. In 2017, and this is where I lost my fucking mind completely. In 2017, he gave an interview to a writer, and I can't even use the word journalist. A writer named Bettina Arndt, where he was painted as the victim of the sexually provocative behavior of a schoolgirl.
Wow.
Yep. This cow of a woman
disgusting.
Was chummy with him. They were just yucking it up together. And she was very sympathetic. Yeah. That whole hemorrhoid thing, that goes for her too. So Bettina prefaces her interview by labeling Bester a so-called sex offender. Like, no, it wasn't so-called. He was convicted. He served time. He was 8 years old and she was 15. The interviewer felt the need to stand up for Bester because this is how the whole thing came to her notice. When he returned to the University of Tasmania, there were protests. Can you believe? What a shocker.
How dare.
People didn't want to go to school with a convicted sex
No
offender.
shit.
They got him banned from the library and other public spaces. And she even brought up the fact that he lost a job opportunity as an organist at a local church.
Good.
Although Bettina claims he's not a pederast, he made bad decisions and should be allowed to get on with his life.
He didn't make bad. He is, okay, first of all, you can't rehabilitate pedophiles. This has been proven repeatedly. If you are attracted to children, you are attracted to children. Mm-hmm. You can't change that. Mm-mm. You can't do anything about that. You can try not to act on it. That's what a person with morals does. But he is a pedophile. He's a piece of shit. And so is Bettina.
Yeah. When all of this happened, so a little background on Nicolas. He was living with his wife and young children. Yes, he has children who, this really just will break your heart. They don't speak to him anymore.
Good.
They were living in York, England when things began to get bad with apartheid in South Africa. Okay, he is South African, but he's living in England. So when things got bad in South Africa, they decided it was safer for them to move to Australia.
Okay.
There might be logic there, but if I don't know what it is.
Maybe things like for South Africans heated up in England?
Maybe. So he was going through a difficult time personally.
Suck it.
When he began his relationship with a student. And this is all from the interview. It was the most vomitocious thing I've ever watched. As for the child porn, here's his story. And he was, it's so laughably bad. I'm like, how this woman could just lick it up and accept it. I'm like, no. He said he illegally, and he admitted it was illegal, he illegally downloaded a copyrighted font. So because it was copyright, and it came as an attachment. And when he opened the attachment to get the font,
there was child pornography.
Child porn magically appeared on his computer, and he immediately got rid of it.
Yeah, maybe somebody could buy that if he hadn't already been busted for child porn.
Yeah. So,
they couldn't buy it. They could not. But maybe they could stretch.
But the police, when they searched his computer, found all of it, despite the fact that he had done his utter best to delete all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, the check is in the mail. I got so mad. Nikki walked in at one point, and I just was like, I'm going to have to find this man and kill him. He knew his student was underage and said he takes responsibility for what he did.
He doesn't.
He shrugged. That was his exact body language. The shrug, what do you do? He said, this was the example he gave. You have sex with a girl at 1 minute before midnight on the day when she turns 18. And before midnight, it's illegal. But after midnight, it is legal. He goes, so what are you going to do? And I'm like, asshole, Grace was 15, not
a minute from midnight.
Not 18. A minute from being 18. The Women's Coalition at the university, he says, is bullying him with their Safe Spaces campaign, targeting him specifically.
Good. Because he's not a safe
anything. To be clear, after the interview, Bettina natters on about how male teachers she has talked to over the years are all in danger from provocatively dressed teenage girls and false accusations.
This bitch needs to be burned at the stake.
Yes, she does. And it's really funny because I watched the interview and she got blowback afterward for saying that Grace Tame was a provocatively dressed teenage girl. And she's like, I didn't say that she was.
Yeah.
I said that girls can be. But it was obvious from the interview, if you hadn't just been hit in the head with a hammer, you knew what she was talking about. She asks if we can talk to, this is a direct quote, young girls about behaving sensibly and not exploiting their seductive power to ruin the lives of men.
No. My God. That's why there's all these stupid dress codes at schools where boys have like one thing that they're not allowed to do and girls' entire clothing and demeanor is policed. Yeah. And wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what that's what young girls are doing.
No, grown-ass men should control themselves.
Yeah, it's like they can't control themselves. I'm like, they can keep their dick in their pants. Problem solved. Staple it to their leg, maybe. She further claims that modern society is caught up in a witch hunt over child sexual abuse.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not really that bad. We're just blowing it up. Yeah. Bettina. She was previously a sex therapist and is now a men's issues activist.
Oh, she's with those groups.
She's one of those.
There's conferences for that. I kind of want to go to one.
As I sputter, I'm like, you would be thrown out almost as fast as I would. How could you possibly keep your lip buttoned?
Oh, it would be so fun, though. Just snark the shit out of that until they kicked me out.
I would be walking around with my holding my mouth closed with one hand and my eyeballs bugging out.
I remember at work we were just somehow there was some big men's rights thing. I think it was happening in Florida. Of course, it was happening in Florida, or like South Carolina. I don't remember. And so we were like looking through the website, and you could watch videos with portions of like people's speeches and stuff. Oh my God, it's painful and it's ridiculous. And they're such victims. They're such victims. Mm-hmm. They think
that's what he was. So now Bettina is all waily because those darn feminists took her interview, spliced it together to make her look bad, and released that version to smear her.
You smeared yourself, hon.
You did, and it stinks. The quotes above are from the full interview, even though I threw up in my mouth watching her bat her fucking eyes at this guy and make jokes.
Oh, well, she should stop using her sexuality. You know, like, wow, what is she doing?
Well, why? He's not interested in her. She's not a 15-year-old girl. By the way, just, if she wanted to really further journalism and getting both sides out there, she did not ask Grace Tame for any kind of feedback before or after this interview. So the word of a white man is good enough. So what happened to Grace Tame, you might be asking? She dropped out of St. Michael's due to bullying. Anorexia and self-harm continued to be an issue for her. She eventually moved to the U.S., graduated from Santa Barbara City College, and has been making a living as a successful artist. Good. And being an artist and making a living is very difficult. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. However, for a very long time, Grace was legally prevented from speaking out for herself. Section 194K of the Evidence Act in Tasmania made it illegal to publish the name of a sexual assault survivor, even with their permission.
Oh.
So while the law was designed to protect victims, it simultaneously silenced those who wanted to speak out.
Right.
And that law was not that old. I mean, I want to say it was in the 2000 that law was passed. So an Australian journalist, Nina Funnell, who was also a sexual assault survivor, heard about Tame's story and began to lobby with the hashtag Let Her Speak movement. Tame got a court order allowing her to tell her story in 2019. She was the first female sexual assault survivor in Tasmania to win a court order to speak about her experience. And in 2020, the gag order on victims was lifted. Also, fun fact, and it is a fun fact, in 2021, Grace Tame was named Australian of the Year.
Wow.
Yes. And apparently, In the history of naming Australians of the Year, not many Tasmanians get that honor.
Well,
I don't know why.
it is a whole separate
So,
island or whatever.
also in 2021, Grace Tame had to contact the Tasmanian police to report that Bester, that rotten hemorrhoid that he is, was harassing her online. So instead of referring to her by name, he referred to her by the email address that she used as a teen when he was abusing her. It was the address that they communicated with. So it wasn't a commonly known email address for her. He said it was almost time for her to get her comeuppance.
Ew.
Yeah. The police have advised her, they say. It's hard to act on vague threats. I get that. But I will say, I can hardly fucking believe it, but Bester's Twitter account was suspended.
Huh.
Right?
Has it been reactivated since Musk took over?
I didn't check that far because I thought if it was, my head would just explode. Tame believes the harassment was timed to coincide with the release of her memoir, which is called The Ninth Life of a Diamond Miner. And it is available on Amazon. An article dated March of this year said that was just like a month ago, right? Like, I don't know what day it is anymore. Anyway, it said that he appeared in Hobart Magistrates Court on Tuesday and pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of using a carriage service to menace, harass, or cause offense. The carriage service being the internet, being Twitter. The case was continued and was supposed to come back up at the end of April, but I wasn't able to find anything specific if it had come up or not. By the way, are you a little bit curious about Grace Tame's former school, good old St. Michael's? Yeah. They haven't learned anything. Apparently, they're still big believers in looking the other way, although former students are following Grace's example and speaking out. In 2017, Rainer Ian Barf, 56, who was a physical education teacher and head of sport at St. Michael's Collegiate between 1989 and 1993, pleaded guilty and was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison for maintaining a sexual relationship for 8 weeks in the 1990s with a young person. It was a 16-year-old female student. During the trial, the court heard that the school was aware of the allegations, but allowed the teacher to finish the year teaching, working at the pool, and coaching. At the time, the acting principal and the school chaplain both spoke to Barch about his behavior. Didn't fucking do anything.
Oh, but they spoke to him.
They spoke, and maybe they spoke harshly, or looked at him crossly. Mm-hmm. So she has become a huge advocate for women to be able to speak out and tell their story and to speak out against sexual abuse. I was just, this is one of those cases where she came through it, and not everybody comes through it this way. Mm-hmm. We were just talking about last week about how we were talking about cold cases and how hard that is for the survivors. And survivors of sexual assault, it's a mixed fucking bag. You don't know how somebody's going to react. You don't know what they have in them to allow them to react one way or another. So my sources are my True Crime a Day calendar. Thanks, Amy. That's where I first found it. And I was like, I got to look at this. Wikipedia. The Bettina Arndt interview with Nico Bester. She called him Nico. ABC, which is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and the Australian Guardian. And he has terrible, terrible teeth. I hope they all rot slowly.
They probably already are, honestly. As if he has that terrible of teeth.
They were his bottom teeth, and it looked like they were very small, and he had about 7 extras. They were all crooked and,
So he's a pedophile and just in general gross.
Yes.
Yeah, the women who are apologetic for the pedophile bullshit and the sexist bullshit and all of that are worse than the people who are doing it themselves in some ways.
Men's rights. It's like... What fucking
Yes,
rights
I know
do
you
they
guys
not
have had all your rights taken away from you. It's rough.
You poor fuckers.
So hard. Poor, like, ugh, little girls just existing and being victimized because they existed. That's basically what this episode was about. This little girl just got sent to rehab for marijuana.
What year? Wait, was that in the 80s? No, she was born in the... Wait.
No. So it was... She was born in 1980.
Okay.
So it happened
It
when
would
she
have
was
been
1995.
Really? Were we sending people to rehab for pot in 95?
I don't know, man. I didn't get sent to rehab for pot. Whatever. But...
Like, how much do you have to...
Well, she met people that she just ended up meeting her murderers there and smoking pot with them.
And I'm wondering if she wasn't having... Maybe she was acting out at home and...
It sounds like it.
And they didn't know how to deal with her. So, what do? You send them to rehab.
Gross. My last response to my kids having problems is to send them away for somebody else to deal with them. But having said that, I get this was a big church family. They just didn't know what to do, right?
I mean, if your child's problem is that they're trying to
doubt the
stab
pot
you
was
to
what
death,
was making her act out. You know, like it's just not that kind of
that's a symptom.
Substance.
Yeah.
The smoking pot was related to whatever was making her act out, and maybe she was just acting out because she was a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And they do that.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. I couldn't find a lot. I wanted to say more about her, about Elyse and what she was into, but really all I found was that she was into the acting and stuff like that. So, there just wasn't a bunch. I feel like one of the fucking dudes that killed her said more about her than I could find places vibrant and sweet and caring and all of that. So, yeah. Not a good world to be a little girl in, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No.
And that's the dark ending of this episode today.
Welcome to the dark side.
That's right. Ugh. That guy's still running around. He's just going to do it more. Right? Like, he's still just running around.
Well, he was 58 in 2010.
Okay.
So he's 68. He's in his 70s now. One could hope for at the least erectile dysfunction.
I'm voting for a car accident with him and Bettina in the car. With a slow, lingering death.
I would support that.
Yeah. That's what I vote for.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
And now there are people out there going, wait, I sponsor this? Yes, and you can too.
You can too. And buymeacoffee.com/MM Mayhem. All right. Thank you for listening.
Yes, we will talk to you next week.
You can support us for, I think there's even $1 a month one on there at the very, so however you want to support us, but listening to us does support us.
It does.
And thanks, y'all. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.